Assassin's Promise by Thomas Woodward. Chapter 102. It was too late, Azric knew. He had worried this might happen. With all of his comings and goings being watched, it would be difficult to mask his meeting with Calian. And yet he must meet with the man. He needed Calian's skills. He needed Calian's trust. The rain spattered on his night cloak as he moved past the small guard entrance. He was attended by 2 personal bodyguards, the bare minimum detail that would be allowed without causing intense scrutiny. They padded along next to him like faithful hounds, their breath misting in the dark night air. The temperature dropped considerably with nightfall, but the city was spared the harsher elements of the desert due to their proximity to the coast. The warm wind mixed with the colder air and made it foggy and damp. He found it miserable. The heavy lanterns his bodyguards carried made a pool of light that served more to blind him than provide any real sight. Anything beyond the tight circle may as well have been invisible. Each of the 2 men carried a heavy belt knife and a long polearm, capable of piercing a man's chest through even the toughest leather armor. The haft of the first man's weapon had a hooked blade that jutted off the top of the spearhead, which could be used to trip a man and hamstring him in one brutal movement. They were bulky weapons, but they served to give warning to any foolish footpad who might be roaming the night, to look elsewhere for prey. Azric sat on horseback, the guards walking beside him. The stable hand had been roused solely to meet Azric's request for a midnight outing. It wasn't unheard of. Azric had made a habit of leaving at all hours of the day or night, so that he would be harder to be tracked. However, it was uncommon. It would be noticed, no matter how much Azric wished it otherwise. He needed to make use of this time and minimize his involvement with Calian. He had received word that his old friend was holed up at the Tap and Pony. The officer who he had planted to intercept travelers on their way to the keep had managed to trail Calian there. The officer he had chosen had dark tastes, but he had been loyal to Azric, after a fashion. Greed was king to many. Haldan was no exception. As one of 4 personal manservants to Azric, he handled more unsavory duties. He was recognized with the rank of captain to any who would bar Haldan from his directives. As long as Azric held a stream of coin, Haldan would do his bidding. He had also ensured each of his 4 manservants would keep a close eye on the other 3. This was one of their primary duties. Should any suspect a change in behavior, they were to relay it to Azric. Should Azric be faced with a consensus, he could simply remove the accused manservant. He made a point of employing his spy masters to provide an additional layer of careful watching to avoid the possibility of a concerted effort against him. Divided and untrusted, his servants and those around him would always have the cause to fear the knife in the dark, should they move against him. Even the whiff of such a threat was dealt with swiftly, and often to fatal effect. Azric was a careful man, and now more than ever, he could not expose himself to undue risks. The horse plodded along in the dreary, chill night. As they came to the bottom of a large hill, the streets wove closer to the docks. Hard-faced men and ragged beggars scattered as they moved through the empty street. Scrawny dogs barked erratically in the ghostly night before retreating into dirty alleys. Ruddy doors with peeling paint peered out from collapsing houses that were haphazardly bunched up together like tired partners, hugging close together for warmth. A yellow bleeding light swung back and forth in the thick mists ahead. A sickly color, the pale shaking specter of a building began to outline itself against the dark gray night. Roiling clouds promised thunder, and Azric pressed forward, impatient to arrive. The tight-lipped men wordlessly exchanged glances with one another, neither speaking or looking in his direction. Casual hand gestures marked them as a pair who had worked together often. The hand signals were a remnant of their years of press servitude in the kingdom's military. All recruits learned the basic hand signals, for when sound was too dangerous to be made. On nights like tonight. But not here. Azric had ensured that after seizing control, when his father had passed. He had imposed additional sharp penalties for any that were caught committing crimes in his city after dark. Common theft would take a man's hand. Assault of any kind was met with death by beheading, carried out by the local magistrate. Proof was often scant or non-existent. It didn't matter. The fear that followed was more than enough to keep most people in check.